So this is what my first level looks like. I included a ramp and a speed bump type of object just to make my level a little bit more creative. So now we're going to try and get this coded a little bit, but there's a little pre-structuring that we have to do. So if you look at hierarchy panel, you'll notice that I have taken all of my world objects, these solids, the walls, the ramp, the floor, all of it, and I've childed it to the world, which is an empty game object. The reason for this is that now all of these child objects, if you will, see how they're indented, they all are in respect to the parent. So the position, rotation, and scale, all of these values have changed, so they're now in respect to the world. So what that means is if I now move the world object, which is the parent, anything that is a child also moves. The same thing happens for the rotation and the scale. All right, so you want to be careful with this type of relationship because now if I select the bump, for example, and say I want to move this around, okay, I can move it separately, but it doesn't move the rest of the objects as well because this is now a child. All right, this is a common error when we start to work with other objects that we want to move just the parent. We have our sphere that we've kind of edited a little bit, but normally when you create an object for the player where they can change their skin, you want the mesh renderer, which is what they're actually seeing, to be separate from any colliders and scripts. If I use the check mark right here, this will go ahead and hide the object. So for example, all you see is the collider. So this green outline represents what the actual solid object is and how it's going to interact with something else. So if I click on the ramp, it's kind of hard to see, but you'll see the green edges. Again, if I hide the renderer, now you can see the actual collider. And these are separate objects. So you can have something shown, but then doesn't have a collider on it, so an object can pass through it, and it doesn't recognize a collision. All right, so I just wanted to point that out. So for our sphere object, we're going to go ahead and keep the mesh renderer on, but we're going to get rid of the sphere collider. So I'm going to click on the gear and remove component. So this just represents the mesh. Remember in our game, we're going to go ahead and set this up so we have different meshes or the player can change the way that it looks. To show what I did with the world, we're going to redo that with the player. So I'm going to go up to create, create empty. And then to rename it, you can either slow double click or you can right click and rename. And we're just going to call this player. All right, I'm going to go ahead and reset this so it goes to 0, 0, 0. And then I'm going to child the sphere to the player. So I'm just going to click and drag and drop it on the player. All right, so notice the position is off a little bit. See how it changed? And mine is not quite 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to reset the position there and it reset there. So now the player and the sphere have the exact same location. So now if I move the player, it moves the sphere as well. All right, so now you just want to be careful. If I select the object in the scene view now, it's only going to select the child, where if I move this, yeah, it changes the position okay, but now it's still registering that the player is over here. All right, just very tricky. So now, from now on, to select something, or the player at least, we're going to have to click in the hierarchy panel and no longer on the object here. All right, so let me reset the position back. We have our player, and we're going to add some components. So we're going to click the Add Component button, Physics, Rigid Body. This allows us to put gravity and a mass and do some physics with our object. We'll do Add Component, Physics, Sphere Collider. So this allows it to collide with other objects. Notice that it's way too big for my objects. Some of you, it might display perfectly and fit the sphere, but for me it's a little too big. So I need to go in and resize this. So I'm going to change my radius to match the size of my ball. All right, so we have the rigid body, we have the sphere collider, and now we're going to get into the coding part to get this thing to move. So before we play test, let's go ahead and add in a camera. Create camera. All right, and this is going to be separate from the player. However, in the tag up at the top, we should probably make this the main camera because this is our only camera in the scene for right now. Let me go ahead and I'm going to click the little camera gizmo. I'm going to move this so I can see the ball. All right, click play. And there it is. You saw it very quickly, it dropped to the bottom, so there is some gravity on it. But if you use the arrows or the WASD, you can't move the ball yet. It's because we haven't coded any movement yet. All right, so all of our code is going to go into a folder, just like we have our materials, our scenes, sprites, so on and so forth. So I'm going to right-click Assets, create a folder, and we're going to call it Scripts. I'm going to click on the folder to go inside of it. It's empty right now. I'm going to right-click, create C# script. We're going to call this Player Controller. All right, so there's my script. I can click on it to see a preview on the right-hand side. And I already have this script all typed out, so I'm going to show you how to edit that. All right. This is a one-time deal. We got to make sure that we have the right text editor set up. So we're going to go to Edit, Preferences, click on External Tools, and in the External Script Editor, we need to make sure that we have MonoDevelop, the built-in version, checked. So you just check mark that. If it's not, should be good to go. One other thing while we're here, when we do our playtesting, go ahead and throw a color on there. You can change your play mode tint. Okay, I would leave the other colors default, but for this allows you to basically just show and register that you are playtesting. So you can change that color if you want to. And you notice when I click the play button, see how everything turns orange? That's just a little reminder that, hey, you're playtesting, and any changes that you make to the world is not going to be saved while playtesting. So for example, if I move my player around and I stop playtesting, it's going to go right back to where it was. Anywho, all right, back to the code. So once you have your script set up in your built-in text editor, go ahead and double-click Player Controller, and that will go ahead and open it up for editing. All right, I'm going to present the code right here. Feel free to press pause and get this all typed in correctly. Watch for typos. If you do create any type of typos, I'll do this on purpose. I left out a parenthesis on purpose. I went ahead and saved it, either Control S on the keyboard or save. And now if I come back into Unity, in the console, if you get a red exclamation like this, that means there's a coding error that you need to fix. It tries to present a solution for it and tells you which line, so this is line 22. If you have any errors, try and fix them. If you can't find the fix, let me know and I'll help you out. Let's put that in, save. If I come back into the editor, you get a little wheel in the bottom right-hand corner. It just recompiles the script and the error goes away. You can't playtest if you have errors in your project, so those all need to be fixed before you can playtest. All right, so once you have that script created, we need to go ahead and throw it on our player object. So this is just drag and drop. So I'm going to select my player in the hierarchy panel, drag the player controller over to the inspector, and now we have the script attached. Feel free to change the move speed, jump speed, and drag, depending on what you like. To get the camera set up correctly, we need to go and create another script that we're going to attach to the camera. So in my scripts panel, I'm going to go ahead and right-click, create C# script, and we're going to call it mouse orbit. So this is the script that's going to allow us to orbit the camera around the sphere while it rolls. Again, double-click on that to open it up in the editor. And again, you can pause here. I'll leave this up for a moment so you can get this code typed in. All right, so lastly, we need to take our camera object and throw in the mouse orbit onto our camera. Notice the different values that we can change here. We have the target. So this is the target that we're trying to follow. For this case, we need to go ahead and drag in the player object into this. So I just clicked and dragged from my hierarchy, and I'm going to drop it right in the target. So now it should say player. You can change the distance that the camera is away from the sphere. So I want it fairly close, so I'm going to choose a value of 5. And then you have your rotation speed, X, Y, and then the different limits. So we're going to limit how far in each direction the camera can go. If you want to invert the camera, you can choose to do that with the invert checkbox. All right, I'm going to go ahead and play test this, and hopefully we should have a working project. So I'm moving the camera around. Okay, notice that the camera goes through certain objects, but I can still see the ball. And now when I move the ball, it's always in respect to where the camera's at. So if I press W or the up arrow key, it's always moving forward. All right, notice you can't see your cursor at all, and there's no way to hit the stop button for playtesting. So in just the editor, you won't be able to do this in the actual game, but in the editor, you can hit escape, and that'll allow you to see the cursor just move around a little bit. And now I can go up and hit the stop button. All right, I'm going to go ahead and post an explanation for the code in a different tutorial just so this one doesn't get very long. So if you want to see an explanation of what the mouse orbit and the player controller code is doing, hook up the other tutorial.